How long should we wait for love? Question mark. So that's the title of this video. This is by Ruisiology, and I'm not sure what will be the main discussion, but the title intrigued me, and hence, without further ado, let's watch.
Sorry about that, I just had to quench some thirst. And if you know anything about thirst, you know that we're going to be talking about Zulaykha and Yusuf's story today. My name is Rusi, and welcome back to another Ruisiology video.
So was that intentional, the quenching thirst with water?
Where I discuss things about Islam and stories and all that awesome stuff. With Ramadan quickly approaching, I know it's such an exciting time of the year, and also at the same time it's a very lonely time of the year, especially for people celebrating it alone during quarantine. I know I've never celebrated Ramadan with people before since I've converted to Islam like last year, and last March, and last March was quarantine, so because of that I don't know what it's like to break fast with like family. I don't know that kind of stuff, but there's actually so much beauty in celebrating Ramadan alone as well, and not worrying about cooking for a bunch of people or watching your favorite shows while you eat. I hope you're doing well, and as we're preparing for the upcoming festive times, I want to tell you the story that I learned from a few of my Muslim internet friends. So, big shout out to Melvin. Anyways, we all know the amazing love story between Prophet Muhammad and Khadija, or Prophet Muhammad and Aisha. But there's one that I didn't really know until recently, and this is one of Prophet Yusuf and Zulaykha. I'm just going to read a bit from my phone because I feel like I'm just going to forget if I don't. The story of Zulaykha and Yusuf, peace be upon him, is an amazing tale of attempted seduction. Zulaykha is mentioned as the Quran as the wife of Aziz, this powerful dude, and the story is also mentioned in Jewish and Christian traditions as well. Prophet Yusuf, or also known as Joseph, was the prophet of Allah and the son of Prophet Yaqub. So there's a whole surah in the Quran dedicated after him. And when they say that Prophet Yusuf was great, I mean, he was a prophet, of course. All prophets are awesome. But there was something special about Yusuf, for he was so attractive that everywhere he went, people literally said it was like an angel walking upon earth. Prophet Muhammad even said Prophet Yusuf embodies most of the world's beauty. Like, that's how anyways, he was just so attractive that everywhere he went, people swooned all over him. What made him peculiar was that he was really headstrong in his faith. I'm gonna be swayed over by other beautiful women who are just walking around, He was just really true to himself, and he was like, I'm not gonna commit zina with any of you. But even though many people did try, and even the wife of Aziz. So the story goes as this. Zulaykha has always wanted Yusuf. Every time she saw him walking down the streets, she's always had her eye on him. So what she did was she told her maid or her nurse or her servant, somebody to usher Prophet Yusuf inside, get him to come inside, say that there's somebody sick so that he can come inside and he'll be mine forever. Kind of like how you would trap an animal. But Prophet Yusuf was no animal. This is how it went down. When the maid called in, "Please help, my master is sick," Yusuf obviously went inside and said, what happened? And then that's when Zulaykha's like, yes, here's my chance. And she tried to seduce him. She said a bunch of sweet words to him. "Oh, Yusuf, you have the most handsome of faces." But then he understood what was kind of happening, and then he just said, well, this is how the Lord fashioned me in the womb. Then she says, "Oh, Yusuf, you have the finest of hair." And he says, well, this will be the first portion of me to wither with me in the grave. Undeterred, Zulaykha presses on and says, "Oh, Yusuf, your eyes are so beautiful, this, that." And he's like, "I used them to look at my Lord." And then eventually this kind of went back and forth on and on until she kind of just got fed up. Listen, Zulaykha was no quitter. She actually made her entire palace super decorated. Imagine the most decorated banquet that you can imagine. That's probably what it would look like, but even better. She told him, "Yusuf, I have prepared the finest of silk and covers, so I order you to fulfill my desires." And even so, he did not. According to Sahih International Translation from the Quran, this is kind of what happened. and she, in whose house he was, sought to seduce him. She closed the doors and said, "Come, you." He said, "I seek refuge from Allah." And she certainly determined to seduce him, and he would have inclined to her had he not seen the proof of his Lord. And they both raced to the door. She tore his shirt from the back, and they found her husband at the door. But upon seeing this, she didn't want to take the blame. She kind of just tried to play her off as if Yusuf was the one who came into her house and tried to assault her, and said, "What is the recompense of one who intended evil for your wife, but that he be imprisoned or in a painful punishment?" And Yusuf said, "It was she who sought out to seduce me." And a witness from their family came in and testified. They said, "If his shirt was torn from the front, then she has told the truth, and it's torn from the back, then he has told the truth." A great embarrassing moment. They looked at his shirt and it was torn from the back. That's right, because it was Zulaykha who tried to stop Yusuf at the door by, holding onto his cloths, and then it ripped open. And indeed, her husband is just standing at the front door like, oh. And because of this, Yusuf got away with it with no repercussions, for he was not to be blamed. But then gossip started going around about Zulaykha. People got hold of this news in the city, and people started talking. They said, "The wife of Aziz has fallen for her slave boy." Her slave boy. What a weirdo. Like, imagine that. Because they were high-ranking people. Zulaykha and Aziz, they were high-ranking people. Yusuf was just their slave boy. So, pretty ticked off about what happened, she decided to set off a banquet to prove her point, that no, she was not to blame, and that Yusuf was someone different. She wanted to prove that what happened to her could have happened to anybody, that anybody could have been seduced like she was. So then she created a banquet. She invited a bunch of women inside and were telling them to cut something, whether it be an apple or some type of food. While they were carving the food, Yusuf walked in to the banquet, and all of them, they started cutting their fingers. Why did they cut their fingers? Apparently because that he was just so attractive that they just was eyes on him the entire time, so they couldn't even look at their food while they're cutting it. And then Zulaykha said, "See, I told you guys this would have happened. Literally, stop blaming me. This is his fault, not mine." She sent him down to kind of like a dungeon type of place, and then from there he stayed there. He was kind of like, well, I'd rather go to jail than displease God, so yeah, I'm okay with that, throw me in. But when Yusuf was jailed, Zulaykha felt like a piece of her was missing. She let herself go, cried her eyes out, and broke all her useless idols that she couldn't deliver. She had a bunch of idols, I guess, in her palace, like many people did. Funny thing is, right now in this age, we don't really have people worshipping like quote-unquote idols. It's more so like, if anything, like fame, celebrity, and money. So in a sense, like money has kind of become our modern day idolatry. Or even if you look at different Eastern religions like Buddhism or Hinduism, it's not necessarily idolatry per se, but it's rather just symbolism. I think idolizing something is like wanting to embody something or to become something, or to like believe that such a thing will give you real happiness. But it's not always physical objects. Idolatry can come in different things like money, obsessing over jobs, obsessing over fame, over popularity, over a human being even. Thinking that if I receive this thing, then I will be happy. In a sense, is if you put that thought into something way too much, you can kind of like lose yourself. So you can idolize celebrities, you can idolize money, you can idolize your crush, you can idolize pretty much almost anything, because even though we don't realize it, that's the first thing we're thinking about in the morning, or that's the last thing we're thinking about during the night. This Ramadan, I hope that I will be able to think of God first thing in the morning, last thing in the night. It's a small thing, but I hope I can achieve that. Wait, I'm getting off topic again. Okay, so yeah, Zulaykha was super sad, and then she also gave her possessions away and released some of her servants. All this while Yusuf was still sitting in jail and stuff. Eventually, she probably let him out and blah blah blah. Some years passed, and eventually Zulaykha's husband Aziz died. And then Zulaykha, still all she wanted was Yusuf. By now, she was kind of aging really quickly and turning into this old woman. So while Yusuf, peace be upon him, was walking around the city and preaching, Zuleika, who was now actually blind from crying so much, can only track him by smell. So she would have to kind of like hear his voice and smell where he is to understand where he was. She had also become a beggar. Yo, sis out here. Kind of relatable though. She became laughable. All the children of the city would laugh at her, point to her, be like, haha, that's a crazy old lady that's obsessed with Prophet Yusuf. But then, Yusuf married her. Here's why. Why would he marry a beggar? Listen, Zuleika was hot. I don't understand why he would have married her if she was like this old beggar. But listen, this is why. Some say that Yusuf alayhi salam married Zuleika because she crossed his path one day and was afflicted by famine. Feeling pity for her, he had decided to support her. They even go out to say that Yusuf asked her, "What were your needs?" And she replied, "Her youth." Other than that, she said she wanted her sight back to look at him. Zuleika became a firm believer. Her youth was restored at an old age. Zuleika's love for Allah genuinely surpassed her love for Yusuf when the Prophet prayed to his Lord so that her youth would be restored. This was to show some nearby disbelievers the favors of God. From that point on, she had declared her love to him first. A strong woman of character, she remained steadfast in her faith and prayers for long hours. She thought that her youth was what made him want her, but it was actually because he waited until the Lord ordained it for her to be made pure for him, pure as in intention-wise. Eventually, she received the message from her Lord to go to Yusuf as a bride. She told him something along the lines of, "I'll be a servant to you and you will be a servant to me, like we will both work for each other." And when they became permissible to each other, Yusuf hinted to her that her new status was way better than the route that she had sought before. Wink, wink. Get it? I feel like this is such a wink wink nudge nudge moment. Hey, after all these years, we could have did it back then, but we waited, so that was worth it. Zuleika replied with something along the lines of, she was only human. She asked that he forgives her. Some say that they had 2 children after, but that part is pretty much unsure. The important lesson and the important takeaway is that Zuleika was a human being just like us. And sometimes I think we kind of forget because we always quote the Prophet. We're like, the Prophet said this Prophet said that, whatever Prophet said, whatever. Which is, of course, important. I'm not diminishing the importance of what the Prophets have actually taught us over time. Because the message that they carry is important, but also just as important is how the message is received by those who are listening and by those of his followers. And what I mean by that is Zuleika was just a normal girl, right? She could be me, she could be you, if you're a girl, I guess. She could be anybody. And this could apply to guys as well. Like, some guys really chase girls and some girls really chase guys. And honestly, when I say I feel like I can relate so much to Zuleika's story, it's just so relatable. I don't know. When I want something, I want it now. I don't really want to wait. Amazon order, hello, I want it now. Prime delivery, you kidding me? Ships 2 to 3 days, I want it shipped today. But no, sometimes we gotta wait. There's bad things that we perceive as good, and there's good things we perceive as bad. So hopefully me sharing this story to you made your day a little bit better, or made you feel a little bit more understood and not alone and vulnerably human in the best ways possible. Thank you so much for tuning in, and in the next episode I will be reading out a poem about Zuleika and Yusuf. It's gonna be super juicy in terms of content and story, so watch that one because I'll be reading it out and I just love it so much, and I'll do a heavy analysis on it because I love overthinking stuff and analyzing stuff. So yeah, sorry my posting schedule hasn't been really regular. Been dealing with school stuff, being university. If you guys want to vlog about how my day goes usually, let me know in the comments below, but I'm just sleeping most of the time.
Okay, yeah, so I have been listening throughout a good storyteller, I guess, right? So the title of the video, because I was anticipating, well, the story have that element, but the lesson learned is more general, I think, the way it was described here, that fulfilling our desire, chasing and want it now instead of waiting. That's one of the things that was highlighted, right? And of course, from the perspective of a male in that story, right, where the steadfast of avoiding doing something that is not permissible, even though the other party actually not just willing but wanted more, right? And you run away. And of course, if you go in depth in the tafsir about how he ended up in jail, it has something to do with that as well, right? The fear of Allah, that's the better choice than being exposed to that challenge up there, right? Interesting. Anyway, I think that's it for today. Hopefully you have learned something from the story as well. Thank you for watching. See you next time.